All right, let's get started. So, in all the lessons that we've had so far, we've talked about buying calls and puts. And so we're always the buyer, we're always outlaying money, we're paying a premium so that we have the right to buy a stock at a certain price or to sell a stock at a certain price. What also can happen is you could be the seller of that. So the person that's buying the call, the put, is actually buying it from you. So you can actually collect money versus outlaying money. And so by collecting money, you can actually earn an income. You can have a steady income just from potentially selling calls and puts. And so we want to begin to discuss that and understand how it works. What are the responsibilities? What are the pros and the cons? And how does it all work? So, as a buyer of a call or put, you have a right. Whenever you spend money, you are the person who, for lack of a better term, calls the shots, right? If you are buying a home, then because you're outlaying money, you get to go to the contractor and say, this is what I want inside that contract. This is what I want inside of my home. If you are buying a car, same thing. You say, I want this color, I want this. So as a buyer, you have the right to buy the stock at a certain price, the strike price. As a buyer of a put, you have the right to sell the stock at a certain price, the strike price. But as a seller of the call, now you are obligated to do something. So buyers have rights and sellers have obligations. So let's go ahead and discuss what we believe our directional bias is based off of what we're doing. Whenever you are buying calls and puts or selling calls and puts, you have to have a directional bias. You either think the stock's going to go up or you think the stock's going to go down. Remember, there's only calls and puts in options. That's only two things that you can have, either a call or a put. But now we're adding a little bit of a twist because now you can either buy or you can sell. So, as the buyer of a long call, and this is why it's in green, you expect it, that is a bullish or a position that we expect to go up. Bullish means up and bearish means down. We expect it to go down. As the buyer of a put, that's why it's in red, we expect it to go down. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. As the seller of a call, now you expect it to go down because it is opposite the buyer of a call. The buyer expects it to go up. The seller expects it to go down or hopes that it goes down. And then obviously the opposite of being a seller of a put, if the buyer of a put expects the stock to go down, well then the seller of the put expects the stock to go up. And you will notice that the seller has one extra line, and I want to clarify this too. When you sell something, you are collecting money up front, and so you have an obligation, but the obligation is only required if the buyer decides to exercise his or her right. And so let's look at it like, once again, car insurance. If you sell car insurance on a car and you collected $100 to insure a car, and the buyer of the insurance never got in an accident, they would never ever have a claim. And so therefore you would just keep the $100 and then you would do the same thing next month. So for the stock market, the way we look at it is if you sell a call and you sell the $30 strike call and the stock goes from 30 down to 29, you collected that. The buyer of the call is not going to exercise their right to buy the stock at 30 because they could buy it in the open market at 29. And so you just kept that $100 in this case. Also, what could happen is, what if the stock just stays at $30? So it doesn't have to go up, it doesn't have to go down. It could just stay right at $30. Kind of like my example of AT&T, how it went up, came back down. It just basically never moved. And so if a stock doesn't move and you were the seller of that call or put, then you just make money because the stock never moved and time expired. We talked about theta and how theta works for you every single day. That proration happens and you collected money. I want you to be able to take a screenshot of this so that you can study it for later. But here's a simple explanation. Buyers have rights, sellers have obligations. Buyers of calls expect the price to go up. Buyers of puts expect the price to go down. Sellers of calls expect the price to go down or stay the same. And sellers of puts expect the price to go up or to stay the same. So very simple slide, but it is still a lot to take in. So take a screenshot and try and memorize this and get this concept under your belt. All right. Now that you understand what a call is, what a put is, you understand if you're buying a call or a put, or you're selling a call or a put, now it's time to actually start talking about, if you go to your brokerage, what does it look like? Because we want to start implementing, the way that you would buy or sell these strategies that we're teaching you. We want to start implementing. And one wonderful thing about the stock market and the brokerage is they will actually give you an account that has what we call fake money. It's called paper money. And so you open an account with a brokerage and they will give you a $10,000 account, a $100,000 account. And so you're able to buy and sell stocks and buy and sell options without it being your money, with no real risk to yourself. But this way you can actually understand the mechanics. You can understand what the buttons do. You can understand the risk. You can see it in real time. You can practice your strategies all without actually risking any money. So you're actually able to take what we've been teaching you and apply it in real time without having any risk. It's a great chance to practice, if that makes sense. I guess another thing I should talk about is the type of accounts that you can have with a brokerage. So with a brokerage account, you can have what's called a margin account. And a margin account is an account that allows you to put in, say, $1,000, but yet they will give you $3,000 worth of buying power. And every single brokerage account is different. Every single company is different as far as how much margin they give you. So the same way we're talking about leverage with options, you actually have leverage in stocks too with a margin account. Another account that you can have is just a cash account. And so cash account really means that whatever you put in, that is the most buying power you have. So in our first example from lesson 1, we talk about a $20 stock. And so the person who bought 100 shares needed $2,000 in order to buy 100 shares of ABC stock. Well, with the margin account, you might only need $500 or $1,000, and you can still control the $2,000, 100 shares. With a cash account, you need the $2,000 in order to actually buy that stock. So that is the difference between a cash account and a margin account. And so now that we understand that, let's look at how to actually open a position inside of your brokerage account and what it looks like. If you are to buy a call option, then you are going to be long. You are buying it. And so you are buying to open. And so inside of the brokerage account, you will see BTO. BTO means you spent money. You bought a contract and you actually had a debit come out of your account. And so if you buy to open, then you sell to close. And so you will see STC, which is sell to close. That means that you collected money, right? So if you bought, even if it lost money, even if your position lost money, you still had to sell to close. So let's say that you spent $3 or $300 to buy to open an option contract, and the stock does not go in your favor. The stock goes from, you bought the $30 strike price, the stock goes from 30 to 27. And so you are, 20 days into it, and it was a 60-day contract, you want to get out of it. You're like, let me just close this position. And so you're saying, I'm down on the position, but I want to salvage whatever I have left. So you will sell to close. So now that you're selling, you're collecting money. And so you spent $3 originally, and you might get back $1.50. So you got back $150. You lost $150, but that $150 was actually credited back to your account. So you collected money. Now, if you're selling something, you actually are selling to open the position. You have no position at all. And so you're selling to open that position. We call that STO. And that is where you actually collect money up front, because you are selling something. The brokerage account puts money inside your account. Now they hold money for margin to make sure you can keep your obligations, but you literally have money deposited inside your account. And so the opposite of that is once you sell to open, then you have to buy to close, BTC, and that means that you spent money, a debit was taken out of your account to close that position and cancel your contract that you had with the buyer because you were the seller. And so here is a slide, and we can try and put this all together. The buyer opens a contract, so buys to open a contract. He gives money to the seller. So a debit is taken from his account. He loses money. Well, the seller sells to open that same contract. And so the seller receives a credit. The seller receives the money from the buyer. And so that is how we open this transaction. And then when we want to end the transaction, then the person that had to buy to open, now they have to sell to close, STC. They receive a credit. Whenever you sell something, somebody's paying you money. And so you're receiving a credit. And the same person who sold to open now has to buy to close, which is BTC. And so they are paying a debit. And so the person that sold, if they sold it for $5, they're hoping to buy it back for less. So they collected $5 up front, and now they're paying a debit back to close it. They're hoping to pay back $3 or $2, and that is how they make money. And obviously on the opposite side, the person that bought to open bought it for $5, and they hope it goes up in price, and so they're able to sell to close for $7. And so this transaction is a tug and pull. It's a push and pull, so to speak, back and forth based off of your bias of the stock and what it's going to do. But this is how transactions actually work inside of your broker account.